Good afternoon. I am Eric Adams, the Brooklyn Borough President, and I am joined here by Marcus and Takisha Randall, who will be speaking about a horrific incident that took place in the public school system involving their son. It's impactful for me, and I want to thank Sergeant Green, a member of the Guardians Association, who contacted me when the family reached out to him and reported this incident. And when you think about it, a parent sends their child to school to learn the 3 R's of reading, writing, and arithmetic, not rape. And when the dream of watching your child develop in school is destroyed by the nightmare of someone who was put in trust of him, abuses him, it is impactful to the family, it's impactful to the child, and it's impactful to the entire educational environment. I don't believe we are doing enough in the Department of Education to deal with this real issue of inappropriate interactions between educators and children. This is not an indictment on every teacher, but it is an indictment on our educational system that our children are placed in an environment where we're not ensuring their safety. How does a child have an opportunity to be alone with another adult for a period of time that some type of sexual action can take place and is not detected? The DOE must go back to the drawing board. We have done so much to ensure that children do not sexually harass each other, that children do not abuse or bully each other, but when you comb through the Chancellor's regs, you do not see enough emphasis placed on the interaction and inappropriate interaction between children and educators. That must end today. This must be the case that makes us realize that it is imperative that our children are safely allowed to go to school in an environment that protects their development and not in any way traumatize them. The conversation with the Chancellor we will be having in the next few weeks will call for every child to receive a good touch, bad touch instruction, that some form of communication or signage should be placed in every school building, that a child will know who to go to communicate with if he or she believes that a relationship is inappropriate with an educator, that we no longer keep this as a dark hidden secret, that we allow a very transparent interaction and educational process of starting to teach young people of what interactions with adults are inappropriate. We have to teach more than the 3 R's in school. We also have to teach those behavior practices that can spill over into our communities. This is an unfortunate incident that rips apart a family. This is a good family with a gifted child. If he or she or anyone of this caliber of a family can be impacted and destroyed in this manner, then it could happen to any family in this city. And I want to thank the mother and father for being responsible adults. Far too often, we ignore the interactions of our children, and I've called on it so many times that we should look at the phones, look at the book bags, look at all of the information that our children have around them to make sure that we know what is happening to our children and how they are interacting with others. This family did not leave it up to chance. They made sure they were involved, and they made sure that they examined the lives of their child, and because of that, they were able to put to halt something that probably would have gone on for a long period of time, and other victims could have been also victimized. So I want to bring on Ms. Takisha Randall to share her outlook on what happened and how she's turning pain into purpose. And then we will bring on her husband if he chooses to speak, and finally her counsel, Kenneth Ramseur, who's going to be handling the case for the family. Takisha?
Good afternoon. I just want to say that I am angry that this happened. You don't expect when you send your children to school that they are in school more than they're at home during the week, and you would think that when you send them to school that they're safe and they're protected in the educational system. But when something like this happens, you have to question why. When this happened, I was very outraged, I was angry, I was saddened. But shortly after, I found that as an opportunity to bring light and help other children who may have gone through this, help other families, and just to be aware and to let them know that there's help out there, there are resources, there are people that care about them. And I also want to say that I do believe in the educational system. However, when this happened, I did have some questions. And I was angry at the system because I entrusted them with my children. So I think there has to be some questions answered. Something has to be done, and also as parents, we all have a responsibility to make sure our children are safe. We all have a responsibility to make sure that they are taken care of, whether they are fed, clothed, and given a good education. We are our children's first teachers. It should start in the home, not when they attend school. My husband and I used to often check our children's book bag, not because we don't trust them, but because kids are kids and kids are going to be kids. But it has to be a balance where, yes, we are allowed to check their book bags and notebooks, and because we are their parents, and their cell phones. Too many times children are left unattended with their cell phone, and we think they're on it for one purpose, but they're on it for a different purpose. So I think that's something that we as parents have to address and also to be mindful of. Thank you. How I found out about this incident, I found it on my son's cell phone. I went into his room just to check up. I heard a noise, and I went into the room to check up on the children, and everyone was sound asleep, even the dog. And my child was on the bed, and the cell phone was in front, and I grabbed it, and I immediately saw text messages and images. Pretty disturbing images. And honestly, I felt lost. I was angry. At that point, I really didn't know what to do. I was pacing back and forth. But finally, I was able to talk to my husband about it. And we were able to come together and contact someone who was very close to our heart, Sergeant Green. And Sergeant Green took on the responsibility to help us. along with our pastor of our church, Pastor Barbara Williams Harris. They were just so very helpful in helping us go through the proper channels. And I can honestly say I really appreciate them. And I value their expertise. And I'm very thankful. Thank you.
As my wife stated, that she found out through the phone, and she told me. As a father, at a situation like this, what do you do? If your fathers, godfathers, anybody, what do you do? It was a struggle with my thoughts, painful, hurt. Someone we entrusted to teach our son, someone who had an education on teaching kids. My son, who we seen the teacher weeks before we found out. It's like someone just stabbed, not in the back, right in the heart, in front of you. My son, he don't get low grades. His grades is high. For someone to confuse a child, to confuse him to say that he's in love, that's disturbing. It's disturbing. Fathers, look at the phones, your children's phones. Talk to your children. Talk to them. I think the service that Mr. Green, Sergeant Green, helped us with. He helped us with a great deal. As my son is not just a victim, my whole family's a victim of the tragedy. My whole family is in pain because of this. Because of this. This is not a comedy, it's not a joke. How far are we going to let this go? How far are we going to keep going and say, okay, it's all right, because he has an education? How far? I'm in pain, my wife's in pain, my family's in pain, family and friends. Who's not in pain right now? The person who confused my son to fall in love with him. Go figure. Sorry.
Good afternoon. My name is Kenneth Ramseur. I am the attorney for the Randall family. Responsibility very often requires courage. It's not something you talk about, it's something you have to do. I think what we have witnessed here is the courage and dignity of the Randall family. This terrible episode came about less than 2 months ago. They came here today. They are obviously traumatized. They're still in pain. But they felt it was important for them to come out there and tell other people, help other parents, for the very simple reason they don't want another parent or family going through what they're feeling now. They comported themselves responsibly and with dignity, but I have to point out something. Everybody doesn't have a Sergeant Green to go to. There's no secret in the public schools that a lot of the students come from very dysfunctional families. They're lonely, they're lonesome. They serve a very appetizing prey for pedophiles. One of the things that alarms me as an attorney, I read the newspapers, and I've had several cases along this line, is that we're not talking about poorly educated, criminally inclined people. There's no secret in the state of New York, New York City, at minimum, you're going to have a college degree, a BS. You probably may have a master's, you may have other certificates. You're going to undergo a background check. We have read it and seen enough examples in the newspapers where professionals will risk going to jail for these acts of pedophilia. Anything that can overcome a person's will to resist that temptation and risk jail time, risk getting fired, the stigma that goes with it, I dare say society has not done enough yet to address these problems. So I would ask for people of goodwill to embrace the courage of the Randalls. Don't talk about what you should do, do it. I have many friends who are educators and I respect them tremendously, but I cannot ignore reality that a lot of people probably have suspicions, but you don't want to stigmatize or embarrass anybody. I think our authorities can implement a program where these situations can be confidentially reported and investigated, because the reality of it is, when a kid is the victim, you can't put the ink back in the inkwell. They're traumatized and devastated for life. These things can cause them to lose any kind of interest or appetite they have for career development or education. So I'm calling upon all of society and all the authorities, pool your resources and let's have convening. What do we do so this does not happen again? Thank you.
Yes.
We decided not to allow him back in that school. He is doing better, but with time he will get better. Thank you.
Our son is not attending no classes right now. He's basically processing. He's processing what has happened. We're still looking into school situations. We're looking into certain schools. As of right now, He's not in school right now.
If I may. Excellent question. Let me remind everybody, this is something that parents cannot train for. They are suffering as they speak today. They're bewildered, they're frightened, they're angry. They have not forgot about the education of their son. He is traumatized. In the meeting we had, we all felt it would not be in his best interest to go back to that same school. But eventually, we hope to get him placed very soon in an appropriate environment for him. But the scarring, as you can well imagine, is very profound. He's only 14. And so I think that it's a process. We're trying to take the long-range view. We don't want a Band-Aid. We don't want the immediate thing. What is best for him in the long run? I'm looking at this young man, not at 14, at 40, having the courage of his family.
These are such terrific parents. Brave, and you also did so many things right, including there was a controlled phone call, I understand. So you were able to get more evidence. And can you speak to that, maybe the attorney or the parents, about the fact that you're actually here?
Since the case is still active, we don't want to go into the details of the case because it's still active. We don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize the DA's investigation.
Can you say how long it had gone on before you saw that, just in general terms, was it a few weeks, days?
This came to the attention of the parents approximately in the first part of March of this year. So this is why the wound is still very fresh and ripe.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there's one more. Yes. You did, so if I understand this correctly, what you'd like from the DOE is some more signs and some more opportunities for training. Those are the two main things would be to let kids know what's appropriate and what's not, and also know that they have the help available if they don't have parents that can go.
Right, two things. One, to answer your question, because we believe it has been going on since March, but the family just discovered the telephone issues a couple, was it a week ago? About a week ago. Right. About a week ago, they discovered the phone, but based on what they saw, it appears as though this has been going on around March, if not longer. Okay? So with the son? I'm gonna answer your question. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. I think that at this time he's coping the best he can. It's traumatizing, and oftentimes, how one processes how they feel, it takes a while. But the parents shared with us that he's coping the best he can at this time. Yes, what we're asking is that there's a lot of emphasis in the school on youth and youth interaction, bullying, harassment, all the things that a child can do to a child. We need to stop ignoring the fact that there are also issues what adults can do to children. And we need to ensure that the chancellor's rags and signage and instruction takes place that will let a child know if there's inappropriate touching, inappropriate communication, here is a direct place you can go to. They should not try to figure out. This shouldn't be geometry. This should be simple English on where you can go if you feel you're being abused. And I was really surprised. I'm going to reach out to the chancellor. This is ground zero. We have a new chancellor. As I started digging through the regs and my staff started looking at the chancellor's regs, I was really surprised. There's a great emphasis on young people and young people interaction, but there's not enough being pointed out about adults and children interaction, and we're going to really touch on this.
Just want to first and foremost, my condolences to the family of my father, myself. I can imagine my condolences. Thank you. Brad, we have been determining whether or not there's history is this or have anybody looked at this materials that you found in this record of the other students being abused in the city? this child?
Not of our knowledge now, but I'm sure the police department they're dumping his phone, they're looking at all records, all of his interactions. They're going to do, the sex crime unit is going to do a thorough investigation to determine if there are any more cases out there. This may be the tip of the iceberg for all we know, but a thorough investigation will determine what is the full extent of this and what happened.
Was this your son's direct teacher, or was it just a teacher in the school who somehow connected with your son?
Direct teacher, yes. Yep.
Do we know how long he's been in DOE?
No, I'm sure the DOE can give you that answer, though. I'm not sure of the extent of his teaching.
One more. Last question.
Yeah, you said that kids need to know there's a correct place to go. Would that be the principal's office or counselor's office? Or would it be the school safety? We'd like in the story to say, go here, and where should we say?
And that's true. I think that a couple of things that we need to do that we have really ignored. We need to bring in child psychiatrists. We need to bring in the sex crime unit. We need to bring in, particularly here in Brooklyn, child abuse unit, and allow them to come in and define what is the correct pathway that a child should go. I don't think it's always the principal's office. It should be. There needs to be an identifiable person in the school building whose primary job is to constantly monitor the interaction between children and adults in the building. That could include school safety officers, janitors, teachers. Right now, we do not have one specific person that a child can say, I feel as though someone is speaking to me inappropriately, someone is treating me inappropriately, and I know I can go there. You can walk into the building and see signage that says if you feel you are bullied by another student, here's where to go. You walk into this building, it tells you where to go if you feel you are a victim of EEO. We are allowing adults to report, but how about children now talking about what they feel is happening to them that's inappropriate? Every child should be given the instructions on good touch, bad touch. Some principals do it on their own. They bring someone in and explain to a child what is a good touch and a bad touch. Every child should have that instruction so they can identify if this is a good touch or bad touch that is based on the age of the child. There's some great experts out there, and I've seen the training, some good training. We need to now make sure every child receives it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Volumes with that.